Ο επόμενος ομιλητής είναι ο Mike Bouguempe. Είναι διεθνής ομιλητής και είναι και ιδρυτής της Lens.ai. Ο Mike έχει ένα πολύ ενδιαφέρον παρελθόν. Έχει ξεκινήσει ως σύμβουλος επιχειρήσεων. Μετά ανέλαβε το Analytics Department μιας μη κυβερνητικής οργάνωσης στη Μεγάλη Βρετανία. Στην πορεία, χρησιμοποιώντας τεχνητή νοημοσύνη, κατάφερε να πολλαπλασιάσει σημαντικά τα έσοδα αυτής της μη κυβερνητικής οργάνωσης.
Παρακαλώ, υποδεχτείτε στη σκηνή τον κύριο Mike Bouguempe, International Speaker, Founder of Lens AI.
Good afternoon. Firstly, let me start by congratulating Microsoft on putting together something fantastic. I've enjoyed a lot of the presentations today. AI can be a difficult subject, a little technical, and I haven't seen anybody sleeping yet, so that's pretty good. I get to talk to you about how do we make this stuff real, right? Making artificial intelligence a business reality. So there's a lot of the hype, there's a lot of the excitement, but how do we actually make this something that's pretty tangible? Let me tell you a little bit about myself first, right, just so that we're all on the same page. In 2010, I was given an opportunity to use AI and that suite of technologies to help the UK become more generous, working with a company called JustGiving.com. And we built a suite of algorithms that allowed millions of people to raise millions of pounds for the charities and for the causes that they care about. In fact, the algorithms actually helped the company get a valuation of over $100 million, and we were sold in 2017. The first engineer that I hired for that program actually was Greek, and that was a complete coincidence. Turns out you guys are pretty good at mathematics. So I took all of that. The struggle wasn't very enjoyable to begin with. It was quite a tense struggle, and I wrote it all in a book and put all of that in a book called Cracking the Data Code, which was launched in February this year, and I'm pleased to say managed to reach Amazon bestseller status. And now I'm a founder of a consultancy organization where we help educate leaders about AI, we help them discover opportunities about AI, and then finally we help them with the cultural element of implementing that within your specific organization. But what are we going to share today? So the three things I'm going to cover, only three things, and I'll stick to time, is firstly, in order to make AI a business reality, you've got to believe it. We've got to go past the hype, the excitement. We've actually got to see it materialize. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But then you've got to accept that it comes with some challenges. It's not the easiest thing to implement. And a lot of organizations, perhaps some of those in here, will find that they get frustrated when you start that journey. And the last thing, we'll talk about a model, an approach that we discovered on our journey on how to make this thing work for your respective organization. So the first thing, the hype, the excitement. Is this actually real? I don't think I need to spend that much time on it, given all the talks that we've had so far today. We've seen a lot of use cases, we've seen a lot of examples. I think it's pretty real. But as an analyst, the way we typically analyze situations like this to say, is this something worth us to invest in? We tend to look for 3 points that give us the answer yes, from 3 different perspectives. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do for you really, really quickly. So firstly, I work with a lot of startups. And one of the things that we do is we look at people who have that crystal ball, people who can see into the future and be able to make some of these bets. And we call these venture capitalists, right? Many of you might know of some of these guys. Now, this community of people have started to invest in AI to the tune of about $5 billion a year. Okay, so that's one source of information. These guys typically don't get this stuff wrong. When they make a bet in something in technology, they tend to get it right. So they're investing in early stage startups as well as a mix of others, about $5 billion a year. So that's one data point. The next data point is let's have a look at some of the big tech organizations. Of course, we're here at Microsoft, but all of these organizations have made major acquisitions within at least the last couple of years. By 2015, every single one of these have made some big acquisitions and made some huge investments. So you've got to ask yourself, before we get to the third data point, why? Why spend all this money on what seems to be initially like a bit of a bet? And the answer is very simple. See, at the core of AI is 2 things, which we've talked about already. It's the machine's ability to learn from vast quantities of data. And what every one of those organizations, which I talked about earlier, what every one of these organizations have seen is that by investing in data and machine learning, they've dominated their respective industries. You've seen Netflix, you've seen Facebook, you've seen all of these guys that have performed way better than many of their competitors simply by working more with the data that they've currently got. So the underlying technology that supports artificial intelligence is already generating commercial advantage for the organizations that are investing in it. Therefore, it makes sense to invest in AI. So that's the second data point. The third one is, well, let's look at anybody who's actually using some of this tech, right? Beyond the big tech companies, how about some people in traditional industries? So there's three of them that I love to use because they're outside of the normal space. The first one is a team called the Black Dog Institute. They do something that's actually quite close to my heart. So what they do is they support soldiers who are coming back from war-torn countries and have a high propensity of suffering from some sort of mental illness or suicide or depression. And that particular group of people tend to suffer quite badly from that condition every time they come back from war. So what they did is they built an algorithm that could predict the likelihood of you becoming depressed or the likelihood of you suffering from some sort of mental health condition. Now imagine what that can do commercially. Suddenly, instead of waiting to start treatment afterwards, you could start looking at preventative measures. It's really fantastic. And one interesting insight, actually, that comes out of that, the further you move from your house, the less likely you are to get depressed. So just by tracking some of these people, they could see that people who started moving less and less and less further from their house on a daily basis were increasing their propensity of getting depressed. Fascinating use case. Well, let's look at Anne Milgram, the lady in the middle. She was the Attorney General of some particular state in the US, and for some reason I've gone completely blank and I can't remember it, so apologies for that. But what she was able to do was use advanced analytics and data to essentially reduce crime, to make us safer. So I think she was able to reduce crime by about 40%. She was able to reduce violent crime in her respective state. The last one is Catapult. If there are any sports fans in here, we've got the Champions League coming up soon. Any of the big teams that have won their respective leagues, particularly in the US, use this company. And they use AI technology, machine learning, and data to predict the longevity, if you like, of their respective sportsmen. They can increase the length of time that these guys are fit and healthy for by predicting the onset of injury and therefore prescribing exactly what sort of exercises you should do, how long you let them play, when you let them play, in order to maximize the result for those individual players. So it's a fascinating use case. So with all of this excitement, it's being used, we can safely say that, look, there's enough to believe in this stuff. However, there is a problem. Many industry reports, Gartner, Forrester, PwC, will tell you that it's difficult. It's really hard to get this to work, particularly for us normal people who don't have the resources and the war chests of Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple. It's really difficult to get this to work. And in fact, some of these articles say that you have about a 75% chance of failing. And that's one of the best numbers I found. Other articles say you have a 96% chance of failing to see any return on investment after you've invested in AI. It's a pretty poor number. But don't get depressed, there's a solution, right? We've got to ask ourselves very quickly why. Why is there such a high failure rate? And there are two reasons that I'll give you really quickly. The first one we've talked about already is our perception of AI. We've got such a negative perception of AI. We looked at some of the movies that were shown earlier, and of course you've got Terminator. Most things that we have of AI is something negative, and it's a very interesting picture. And that negative perception, you can imagine if you're a marketing manager, and I have direct experience of this, and I walked up to him and I told him, I've got an algorithm that could increase the success of your emails by 98%. Because of this perception, he was never going to adopt that technology. It automatically creates this resistance between members of the business community. It's going to take away our jobs. And there's another whole talk that we can do around that. The second one is this formula that most companies seem to adopt, which, by the way, doesn't work very well. And that formula is, let me get one idea and then hire a data science team. And that combination, I'm going to win. I'm going to win with AI. Completely false. There's so much more that you need than that. Right? So just getting a team of smart people who can do a lot of mathematics plus an idea is not enough for you to win in AI and in data science, machine learning, or any of those family of technologies. Now, I'll tell you that when I was in Just Giving, I was very much a part of this 75% that were very unlikely to be successful. There was a lot of resistance internally from the organization, from individuals within the business. So what I did is I took some time out and I said, you know what, let me go to my whole network. Some of these apps you might see on your phone. I'm going to go to the people I know at Facebook, at Netflix, at Amazon, and work out exactly what they're doing differently. And what's really interesting is there was a natural pattern that came out of it. Every single one of these organizations did a set of things that most organizations don't do. So we took those set of things, went back to Just Giving, applied them, and within a year we had algorithms generating in excess of 20 million for charitable donations. So really exciting stuff. This stuff works. And for the remaining 4 minutes that I have on the clock, I'll take you through these items and these 5 things that you should do and consider within your respective organizations to get this to work. The first one is all of those organizations that I talked about had a leadership team, and when I'm talking about a leadership team, I'm talking about the C-suite, that pretty much understood what AI was. Not to say that they could all write complex algorithms, but they knew exactly what their role was. They could explain it in English. They could have a conversation with the technical team. There weren't 2 different languages that were taking place, which meant that they also had the opportunity, and if you like, the ability, to be able to find use cases within their organizations. And the other difference was, we always say AI, machine learning, will help us make better decisions. I want to ask you guys, how many companies do you know have actually written down all the key decisions that they need to make? Or who in the organization are the ones who know all the key decisions that they're supposed to make? See, often with AI, we tend to leave the ideas with the technical team. But just have a look at these companies, right? So look at Amazon. They use it to decide what additional, on their recommendation engine at least, what additional products should I serve this user to maximize basket size? Facebook use it to decide what content should I present and in what order should I present that content to maximize engagement from a user. You can even look at all the other examples that I talked about where in Anne Milgram they can decide sentencing to try and see the impact on total crime. Or even the sports company Catapult will help them make decisions on what sports exercises to do for their individual players. If a business is a system of decisions and AI is going to help us with decisions, we've got to move the ability of using that technology from the tech team to the business team. Because who knows the decisions best? Who knows the decisions that impact your organizations commercially? And this is not to say that we shouldn't talk to the developers. What I'm saying is, without an educated leadership team, you will struggle to find a lot of these opportunities, in particular, the low-hanging fruit. And every single one of those organizations that I saw had a leadership team that could explain AI and its suite of technologies completely different to those that were unsuccessful. The second thing is you need a captain to look after your team, someone who's dedicated to just getting value from data, right? It's not a part-time job. You can't give it to your chief marketing officer or a chief financial officer as part of their role. Each one of these organizations, with the exception of Netflix, there's always an exception, had a dedicated either chief data officer or chief analytics officer, someone for whom their mission was to generate value from data, and more importantly, it was someone who had a voice on the C-suite. So it wasn't someone junior. And that was very different from some of the other organizations that we've seen. And you will see, interestingly, as I go through these things, that most of them are not technical. Most of them are to do with behavior, human behavior, and leadership decisions. So you need a captain. You need a captain because the seas are rough and it's difficult out there. Getting data science, machine learning, and AI to work for your organization is hard. You're going to offend a lot of people. Cultures are going to have to be changed. Behaviors are going to have to be changed. Not everybody within your organization is going to embrace this, particularly if their jobs are threatened by it. Right, so move on to the other thing that they did. The other thing is, a lot of companies, when I talked about the approach that they use, they come up with one idea. See, the issue with coming up with one idea is really, really terrible. Because whatever you do in the AI and machine learning space, it's a journey of discovery. Your competitors might have built a churn model, and you're saying you're also going to build a churn model. It doesn't mean you'll get any results because you're going to use your data. And you have no idea what you will discover until you actually start that project. You have no idea whether there is any signal within your respective data that will give you an answer to some of those churn questions that you have. So every single AI project is a journey into discovery because you need to see if there's any signal within that data. So using the approach of one idea is terrible. What those successful companies did, however, is they had a portfolio approach. They had lots of ideas. They elevated themselves and had lots of ideas that allowed them to context switch pretty quickly, that allowed them to go down a rabbit hole, and if they got stuck, they could come out really quickly and have a look at some of the other options. Okay, we've got 2 more left. The next thing that they did is they forgot about this idea of having a unicorn. This data science that can both speak to the C-suite, make great presentations, and write fantastic algorithms. It's really, really difficult to get those individuals. And also, when you do, that's not all you need. To get machine learning and AI, as we heard in the previous talk, you need a raft of skills. Behavioral economics plays a really big part of that. Data architecture plays a really big part of that. Your standard developer who can write great code and is very different from your data scientist who probably can't write enterprise-grade code, but can write an algorithm. They're all different skills from different people. So actually what you need is a diverse team, which is completely different from this idea of having this one unicorn. And the last one that I'll share with you is changing the culture of work. One of the most difficult things is for us as human beings is to break with tradition, break with the way that we currently do things. AI presents an opportunity to change that completely. But good luck if you're going to get a data scientist or an engineer to try and change a culture. It's not going to happen. I don't know anybody who's been successful without that. It's a completely different skill set that you need to try and change and move people from doing things the traditional way. So even if you had an algorithm or an AI machine that could do something significantly better than some employees within your organization, I guarantee you that one of the problems a lot of us face is that give them time, humans prefer ubiquity and simplicity, they go back to the way they used to do things. And it becomes quite hard to change. So what these organizations did is they had full change across all of the organizations, where the culture was fundamentally different. Data was your friend. As we saw within some of the talks, it was a real bionic experience of man and machine, where decisions were made collectively together with data, and that purely gut reaction was removed slightly away from it, although it's quite important. And so all of these 5 things, if we go through them, are the key things that we saw. They're the key things that we saw in the successful organizations. And those that weren't successful typically focused on just saying, let's get a data science team, let's put them together with a great idea, and then we will get there. So all of this I've put together in my book, by the way. If you're interested, get onto Amazon, you can have a look at it. And as I leave, I'll just leave you with 3 thoughts, okay? So AI is already making us healthier. It's making us safer, and it's actually making us smarter. But this doesn't happen unless you guys, the business leaders within your respective organizations, take time to educate yourself about it. There's lots of courses. We can help with that, but there's lots of courses. Even Microsoft have put together an AI school. Absolutely essential that we take your time to educate yourself about it, because you guys are the ones who understand the commercial decisions within your business, and therefore the use cases and the areas in where this can have a fantastic impact. And take time to explore. Take time to explore all the opportunities. And finally, think about the staff and enable them to work directly and work correctly with the machines. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really like the fact that you used AI in the NGO, the Just Give, to raise money for generous causes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what's the most generous thing or act you've ever seen?
Oh, the kindest act that I've ever seen. My wife forgiving me? It's hard to say, to be honest. There are people who have done some amazing things. See, in the UK, they have this culture of when they do something for charity, they tend to either run a marathon or there's someone I know who did 7 marathons in 7 days. But there's some people who do some funny things, like they'll go to work in just an underwear for 3 days in a row.
Really?
You know? Yes. But people are willing to humiliate themselves or do something extraordinary for the causes that they are absolutely passionate about, which is great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
And is there something, an ability of an AI machine or application that you would like to see in the future?
Oh, wow. There is so much that I want to see. I have 3 little boys, and I would love if we can So sort of take out the robot from us as human being and allow us to spend more time being compassionate and being more loving. So remove all the manual tasks that I have to do, personalize education that we've seen, and just allow us to do the things that a machine will never be able to do, like be loving and be compassionate, and for me to just raise my kids with all of that layer on top of it. That's what I'd love to see.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.